Welcome back to Spiritual Summaries. If you haven't yet, click subscribe and ring that bell to stay updated. Today, we're delving into Genesis chapters 16 through 20, exploring everything from Hagar and Ishmael to the dramatic events surrounding Sodom and Gomorrah. Just a quick note, we're summarizing these chapters based on the King James Version, but feel free to read from any Bible version that you prefer. Our goal is to spark your curiosity and encourage you to read the full chapters in the Bible yourself. Ready to get started? Hit that like button, and let's dive in. Genesis chapter 16 delves into the story of Sarai, Abram, and Hagar, and it introduces the birth of Ishmael. This chapter highlights the complexities that arise when human actions attempt to hasten divine promises. The problem: barrenness. Sarai, Abram's wife, has not been able to have children. She has an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. Sarai's idea: Sarai suggests that Abram should have a child with Hagar so that Sarai could build a family through her. This was a socially accepted practice at the time to deal with barrenness. Hagar and Abram. Consent and conception. Abram listens to Sarai, and Hagar conceives a child. Tension rises. Once Hagar knows she's pregnant, her attitude toward Sarai changes, leading to tension between them. Conflict and flight. Sarai's complaint. Sarai blames Abram for the strained relationship between her and Hagar. Abram gives Sarai permission to deal with Hagar as she sees fit. Harsh treatment. Sarai treats Hagar so harshly that Hagar decides to flee. Divine encounter. Angel of the Lord. While Hagar is near a spring in the desert, the angel of the Lord finds her and instructs her to return to Sarai and submit to her. Promises to Hagar. The angel tells Hagar that she will have numerous descendants and that her son should be named Ishmael, meaning God hears, because God has heard her misery. Characteristics of Ishmael. The angel also prophesies that Ishmael will be a wild donkey of a man and will live in hostility toward all his brothers. Ishmael's birth. Return and birth. Hagar returns, and she gives birth to Abram's son. Abram names him Ishmael. Abram's age. The chapter concludes by noting that Abram is 86 years old when Ishmael is born. And that's Genesis chapter 16. The chapter sets up further complexities in Abram's family life and introduces Ishmael, who becomes a significant figure in the Bible as well as in Islamic tradition. Genesis chapter 17 is a pivotal chapter that focuses on the covenant God establishes with Abram, who is renamed Abraham in this chapter. The chapter is rich with promises and introduces the rite of circumcision as a sign of the covenant. Renaming and covenant. New names. God appears to Abram and renames him Abraham, meaning father of many nations. Sarai is also renamed Sarah, meaning princess. Everlasting covenant. God establishes an everlasting covenant with Abraham and his descendants. In return, Abraham is to be obedient and faithful to God. Promises. Numerous descendants. God promises to greatly multiply Abraham's offspring, making them exceedingly numerous. Land grant. God reaffirms that he will give the land of Canaan to Abraham and his descendants as an everlasting possession. Circumcision. Sign of covenant. God instructs Abraham to circumcise every male in his household as a sign of the covenant. Age specifics. The circumcision is to be done on the 8th day after birth for those born in his house or bought with money. Promise of Isaac. Sarah's child. God promises that Sarah will bear a son named Isaac, and God will establish his covenant with Isaac as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. Ishmael's blessing. God also hears Abraham's prayer for Ishmael and promises to bless him, making him fruitful and multiplying him exceedingly. Immediate obedience. Action taken. Abraham immediately circumcises all the males in his household, including himself and his son Ishmael. Their ages. The chapter notes that Abraham is 99 years old, and Ishmael is 13 when they are circumcised. And that's Genesis chapter 17. This chapter serves as a cornerstone for understanding the relationship between God and the Israelites, setting up the covenant that guides much of the biblical narrative. It also sets the stage for the birth of Isaac, who becomes another key figure in the Bible. Genesis chapter 18 dives into the story of Abraham's encounter with three mysterious visitors and his intercession for the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. The chapter offers insights into hospitality, righteousness, and the character of God. Three visitors. Unexpected guests. Abraham is sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day when he sees three men standing nearby. Hospitality. Recognizing the importance of the visit, Abraham rushes to welcome them. He offers water, rest, and has Sarah prepare bread while a servant prepares meat. The promise reaffirmed. Sarah's laughter. One of the visitors, understood to be the Lord, reaffirms that Sarah will have a son. Sarah, overhearing this, laughs internally due to her old age. Is anything too hard for God? The Lord questions why Sarah laughed and reiterates that she will indeed have a son, emphasizing that nothing is too hard for God. Sodom and Gomorrah. God's dilemma. The Lord contemplates whether to share his plan of destroying Sodom and Gomorrah with Abraham, eventually deciding to do so because of the role Abraham will play in history. Abraham's intercession. Abraham questions the Lord about the forthcoming destruction, specifically asking if God would spare the city if even a small number of righteous people were found there. Through a series of negotiations, the number comes down to 10. God's response. The Lord agrees that if 10 righteous people are found, he will not destroy the cities. And that's Genesis chapter 18. This chapter reveals several key aspects of Abraham's character, his hospitality, his dialogue with God, and his concern for justice. It also sets the stage for the dramatic events involving Sodom and Gomorrah in the next chapter. Genesis chapter 19 is a dramatic chapter that recounts the destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, as well as the escape of Lot and his family. The chapter also delves into themes of judgment, divine intervention, and human morality. Lot's hospitality. Angelic visitors. 2 angels arrive in Sodom and are welcomed by Lot, who insists they stay at his house. Dinner. Lot prepares a meal for them, and they eat. The wickedness of Sodom. Aggressive mob. The men of Sodom surround Lot's house, demanding that he bring out his guests so they can have sexual relations with them. Lot's plea. Lot offers his 2 virgin daughters instead, trying to protect his guests, but the mob is not satisfied. Divine intervention. The angels intervene by pulling Lot back into the house and striking the men outside with blindness. Escape and destruction. Warning. The angels tell Lot to gather his family and flee because they are going to destroy the city. Hesitation. Lot hesitates, so the angels grab him, his wife, and his 2 daughters, leading them out of the city. Instructions. They are told to flee to the mountains and not look back. Fire and brimstone. Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed by fire and sulfur from the sky. Lot's wife. Despite the warning, Lot's wife looks back at the city and becomes a pillar of salt. Aftermath and cave incident. New home. Lot and his daughters move to a cave in the mountains. Sons by daughters. Fearing that they will not have husbands and children, Lot's daughters get him drunk on 2 consecutive nights and sleep with him. Both become pregnant and give birth to sons, Moab and Ben-Ami, the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites, respectively. And that's Genesis chapter 19. The chapter serves as a sobering account of divine judgment but also portrays the consequences of human choices, both good and bad. It also sets the stage for the later interactions between Israel and the Moabites and Ammonites. Genesis chapter 20 takes a detour from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah to recount another episode involving Abraham and Sarah's journey. This time, they find themselves interacting with King Abimelech of Gerar. The chapter touches on themes like integrity, divine intervention, and restitution. Abraham and Abimelech. Journey to Gerar. Abraham and Sarah move to Gerar, a territory ruled by King Abimelech. Deception. Fearing for his safety, Abraham tells people that Sarah is his sister, not his wife. Abimelech, taking Abraham's word, takes Sarah into his palace. Divine warning. God's dream. God appears to Abimelech in a dream, warning him that Sarah is a married woman and that he will die unless he returns her to Abraham. Abimelech's defense. Abimelech protests his innocence, arguing that he acted in ignorance and integrity of heart. God acknowledges this but insists that Sarah must be returned. Confrontation and resolution. Abimelech confronts Abraham. Abimelech confronts Abraham for his deceit and returns Sarah to him. He also gives Abraham gifts of livestock and servants and permits him to settle in his land. Abraham's explanation. Abraham defends his actions by saying he thought there was no fear of God in Gerar and believed they might kill him for Sarah. He also explains that Sarah is technically his half-sister, thereby partially justifying his claim. Intercession and healing. Abraham prays. At God's instruction, Abraham prays for Abimelech and his household, who had been rendered barren as a consequence of taking Sarah. Restoration. God heals Abimelech and his household, allowing them to bear children again. And that's Genesis chapter 20. This chapter shows how even great figures like Abraham are prone to moral lapses. However, it also reveals God's justice and grace, preserving the innocence of Abimelech while also holding Abraham accountable for his actions. And that's it for our exploration of Genesis chapters 16 to 20. From the story of Hagar and Ishmael to the riveting account of Sodom and Gomorrah, there's no shortage of impactful narratives in these chapters. As we've mentioned before, these summaries are based on the King James Version but are intended to spark your interest in exploring the Bible further, using any version that resonates with you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with anyone who might find it useful. Also, if you haven't already, hit subscribe and the notification bell to keep up with our future episodes. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Spiritual Summaries. Your journey to a deeper understanding of these timeless stories continues with your own reading. See you next time.